So this morning I woke up and I heard, let's talk about compassion and wisdom. So let's. Compassion and wisdom are not soft qualities. They are structural forces. If you want anything to survive long term, you need compassion and wisdom in order to sustain it. Compassion is the ability to see clearly and care anyway. It's not just being nice, it's seeing the full reality of the situation, the fears and the resistance and the struggles of whatever the situation may be or the people that may be involved. Understanding what drives behavior under the surface and responding in a way that reduces unnecessary harm while still moving things forward. I've always had the ability of compassion ever since I was little. I was able to see why people make the decisions that they make because I watched the reactions that happened that led up to the decision that they made. And/or I've been in a situation that made me understand why they took the action that they took, or why the thing happened in a way that it happened, the reason why it happened. So I've always been able to do this ever since I was a kid. And it's being able to recognize that resistance isn't always defiance, it's often fear or past conditioning. And having compassion for someone in a situation, it's usually based on either a fear that they're experiencing or had that led up to the decision that they made, or it was just past conditioning. They were taught this way and they know no other way. So I have compassion for them because of that reason. So again, it was either I had been in a situation that they had been in, which made me understand what they were going through and feel for them and still care for them, not just shutting them off and saying, oh, I can't believe you did that, I'm done with you. No, I have no compassion. No, I have compassion for everybody. I understand why they do what they do, what led them to whatever decision that they made. And that's just the way that it's always been. Understanding that people operate based on the environments that they are inside of. If someone suddenly quits without a word, there is typically a reason that led up to that extreme behavior. It was either it had to have been the environment they were in that led them to an extreme decision to just up and quit. People don't just do things just to be doing things with no reason behind it. That is having compassion for them and then still caring for them afterwards. Creating psychological safety so truth can actually surface. So your job for that, what compassion does is it creates psychological safety. I understand why you did what you did and I still care for you. That's creating a psychological safety environment so that the truth can actually surface, that it can be talked about. Having compassion is being able to create an environment for the individual to express whatever it is that they need to express so that the information can surface and it can be dealt with. You can't do that if you don't have compassion, if you don't create a compassionate atmosphere. But there is a limit to that, which is something that I had to learn the hard way as well. As I can go deep and dive into somebody's subconscious and understand why they did what they did, but that doesn't excuse that these are choices that they do make. It's one thing making choices based on information that you don't know, that you've been conditioned to understand. It's another doing it and making these choices based on information that you already knew. So knowingly hurting someone, knowingly making decisions that's ultimately going to hurt someone. So there is a limit, and that's what brings me to the next part, which is wisdom, which is pattern recognition. But before I get into that, compassion says, I see what happened under the surface of whatever this is, and I'm not going to punish the signal that I see because I understand it. But again, that can get carried away. I spent 11 years in a relationship with someone who consistently had a third party involved, whether that be another individual or whether that be something on the internet that they spent thousands of dollars doing over and over and over again. I understood why they did it, because of childhood wounds and things like that. And a lot of that was pushed on to blame for me as well, which I was naive enough to understand. And so again, there is a limit to compassion, and that's where the limit breaks into wisdom, is understanding the pattern recognition, that it's not always just because the person didn't know better. It can turn into something different. So you have to have wisdom as a balancing act to compassion. So wisdom is the ability to discern what actually moves the system forward. So discernment, again, is to perceive, to recognize, to detect, to separate, to set a point. So it's the ability to discern what actually moves the system forward, being able to understand what it will take to move it forward. Wisdom is pattern recognition over time. It's the ability to see beyond the present moment. Identify the root cause versus the surface symptoms, which can be confused with compassion. Knowing when to intervene and when not to. Making decisions that hold up long term, not just protect you from the unnecessary damage or traps that happen in the moment. I think I'll just leave it right there. There's a lot to take in. I think Aristotle had a concept called phronesis. It's like Phronesis, and it's knowing what to do, when, and how. This is system-aware decision-making, not rule-following, to act with precision. Wisdom says, I know where this leads if nothing changes, and I'm willing to act accordingly. So again, with my situation in my relationship, every time it happened, I excused it because I understood that there was deeper wounds that needed to be addressed, and action that needed to follow after those wounds were addressed. And over time, they would be addressed, but then the pattern would fall back into, like 6 months later, it would fall back into as if nothing changed. And then I would have to go back into it. I understand why you did it. I understand the wounds. We need to make this stable. And it would continue on. It would continue on. And it took a very long time for me to be, I know this, where this is going to lead. I trust my intuition enough to know that this is going to happen again, regardless of what you say it is going to happen. The change has not changed, and here are the reasons why, because here are the things that I can see every single time, the patterns that I can see every single time, and I'm willing to act accordingly. I'm willing to end this relationship accordingly because I can see the pattern is continuing again. I can see the little things that are happening that's going to lead up to this happening again, and I choose not to be in it. And so that is wisdom. And the thing is that you can't just like obtain wisdom. It has to be pattern recognitions. It needs to be confirmations, and having compassion can be quite detrimental to balancing out wisdom with it because of everything that I just said. And most leaders in this kind of position, I kind of want to go into leadership with this as well. I know that this kind of went a little personal, but what better way to use an example, right? And what better way to show that there is a way to overcome all of this if you balance these things out properly. So most leaders lean too far into one side, and this is where they end up getting stuck. If you lean far into compassion, you end up being in a cycle that continues to repeat. If you lean far into wisdom, it's going to be this is the way that it's going to happen, and there's no fixing it. Like, there's no changing it. I know that this is what's going to happen, so we're going to do it. But there needs to be a happy balance. And leaders typically lean far into either wisdom, they use their wisdom with no chances of change, and I'll give some examples here in a minute, or they lean far into compassion where it gets them into a trap as well. Compassion without wisdom avoids hard conversations, over accommodates, and keeps broken systems intact to protect feelings. The result is burnout, quiet dysfunction, and hidden resentment. Having too much compassion, having an extraordinary amount of compassion, understanding why people do what they do, excuse me, can lead to resentment, for the exact reason that I just said. We've done this over and over and over again, and that can lead to resentment, and which can ultimately lead to bitterness. So having the happy balance of understanding when wisdom takes over, when wisdom needs to take over, when those boundaries need to be put into place, is incredibly important. So that is compassion without wisdom. Wisdom without compassion becomes overly clinical and detached. Pushes change without considering the human impact. Optimizes systems while breaking trust. We need to fix the way that this workflow, or we need to implement this new thing in this working environment, or we need to do this thing without actually understanding the human impact. Nobody's feelings are taken into consideration. We just become a machine. And the results become compliance without commitment. Everyone does what they need to do, but no one is fully committed to whatever the mission is, whatever the reason for it is. In a relationship, we're doing this because we were in this relationship for a very long time, but there's no passion, there's no compassion, there's no commitment. It's just the way it's always been done. True leadership is integrating both compassion and wisdom, and this is where I've talked about Opal leadership before if you've seen any of my other videos. Compassion plus wisdom is clear truth delivered in a way that people can receive it. Accountability without shame, and change that actually sticks because people feel safe enough to engage. The balance is, I see you clearly and I will not lower my standards. So some examples would be, without compassion, this is the direction that we're going, get on board. I know that sounds familiar because it's everywhere. Without wisdom, it becomes, it's okay, we don't have to change this right now. Let's get through your feelings first, and when you're ready, we will continue. That's without wisdom. That's compassion without wisdom. With both, it becomes, I can see why this feels risky. I can also see what happens if we don't address it. Let's walk through it together so that we can move forward without leaving anyone carrying the risk all alone. Compassion is what keeps the system human. Wisdom is what keeps the system aligned. Without compassion, the system becomes very extractive, and without wisdom, the system becomes stagnant. And together, the system becomes stable. And the reason why I'm using this in both leadership and then my example for relationship is because it's exactly the same thing. Your relationships are an internal version of your external world. How you show up in your relationships is how you're going to show up in your external world, your external environment, your working environment, or whatever it may be. How you show up for yourself is how you're going to show up for other people, whether you see that or not. So, I don't know if I have anything else to add for my wisdom and compassion, but if I do, I'll post another video. It's just something to think about. If you feel you're on the more wisdom side, add a little compassion now that you know what compassion is. If you feel you are way too compassionate and you're giving too much slack to individuals who don't need it, start tapping into your wisdom and start creating boundaries. Having the happy balance is what's going to get you out of whatever the situation is that you're in. And it's going to be better for everybody.